My name is Gloria Thompson, and if my 58 years have taught me anything, it's that dreams aren't free. They come with a cost few truly understand. I've spent my life on my knees, cleaning, scrubbing, and polishing the surfaces others casually walked on. Each night I would come home with aching bones and hands cracked raw from the chemicals. Still, every morning I rose again before dawn to do it all over. It was never about me. It was about my daughter, Jasmine. I raised Jasmine alone after her father, Marcus, passed suddenly when she was barely 6. Marcus had been our rock, the steady hand that balanced the chaos of life in our small Philadelphia apartment. After his death, it was just Jasmine and me against a world that seemed stacked against us. Our neighborhood was loud and rough, its streets filled with noise that echoed long into the night. But within our small walls, I built a fortress of hope. Jasmine wouldn't know the poverty I had accepted as normal. Her future would be different. To shield her from the hardships I faced, I hid my exhaustion behind bright smiles, never letting her see the tears that fell silently in the bathroom each night after work. I took on more cleaning jobs, scrubbing corporate offices in the heart of downtown Philadelphia during the early mornings and late evenings. My third job was at a nursing home on weekends, caring for elderly souls whose families had long forgotten them. It was grueling work, both physically and emotionally, but every scrub of the floor, every swipe of the rag, every comforting word spoken to a lonely resident, all of it was fuel for Jasmine's dreams. I still remember the day Jasmine declared her aspiration to become a lawyer. She was just 16, eyes blazing with determination. "Mama, I want to go to Columbia," she had announced confidently. Columbia University in the heart of New York City seemed like another planet from our modest home, yet I didn't falter. Instead, I felt a rush of pride and a new, overwhelming weight of responsibility. My child would achieve greatness, and I would be the bridge that got her there. My own dreams had long faded, replaced by visions of Jasmine in a cap and gown holding her diploma high. My entire existence became structured around making her aspirations a reality. There were no new clothes, no fancy dinners, no vacations. Every cent went directly into Jasmine's future. I meticulously tracked every expense in a worn notebook hidden away in my bedroom dresser, a silent testament to our sacrifice. When Jasmine received her acceptance letter from Columbia Law School, I wept openly for the first time since Marcus's passing. It felt like validation, a life's labor finally bearing fruit, yet beneath the pride was a lingering whisper of exhaustion, a quiet voice reminding me how high the cost had already been. Still, nothing mattered more than seeing Jasmine thrive. Little did I know, the pride I felt that day, the dreams I nurtured with my life's toil, would eventually turn into heartbreak so sharp it would take my breath away. The sacrifice had been mine. But the outcome would change everything. Before I continue, I want to ask all of you to please give a like to this video and subscribe to my channel, The Silent Stories, for more stories like mine. Your support means the world to me. Also, I'd love to know where you're watching from, so drop a comment telling me which country you're tuning in from. It's incredible to see how far this community of wonderful people has grown, and I'm so grateful to be able to share my story with you. When Jasmine stepped onto the campus of Columbia University for the first time, it felt like a victory, a triumph built brick by brick from the sweat and calloused hands of a woman who refused to let poverty define her child's future. That woman was me, Gloria Thompson, the cleaning lady from North Philadelphia, whose dreams had long ago been transferred to her daughter. The day Jasmine left for New York, I watched the bus pull away with an ache in my chest I couldn't quite explain. Pride mixed with emptiness as I waved goodbye, clutching the cheap floral print scarf she had given me as a parting gift. As the bus disappeared around the corner, I wiped my tears and took a deep breath. Jasmine's journey was just beginning, and so was mine. Columbia was expensive, more costly than anything I'd ever imagined. Scholarships helped, but they barely scratched the surface. To fill the gaps, I doubled down, accepting extra shifts at the nursing home and cleaning the polished marble floors of corporate offices until late at night. My day would start in darkness and often end the same way, each hour passing in a blur of exhaustion. I even began cleaning the sprawling homes of Philadelphia's affluent suburbs on Sundays, my own day of rest sacrificed willingly for Jasmine's future. I hid my pain carefully, never wanting Jasmine to sense the toll it took on me. Our phone calls became my lifeline, her voice bringing a brightness into my darkened days. But over time, something subtle began to change. Jasmine's voice shifted slowly, gaining polish and sophistication. Her sentences became laced with unfamiliar words, reflecting experiences far beyond my simple life. While I was proud, a part of me felt the growing divide. One winter, when Jasmine returned home, the change in her was unmistakable. She moved differently, spoke differently, and seemed uncomfortable in the small, cramped apartment we'd shared for years. It hurt, but I convinced myself it was normal. She was growing, evolving, becoming the woman she needed to be. Still, my heart tightened with every subtle indication that my daughter now saw our humble beginnings as something to be concealed. Her visits grew shorter, more infrequent, but my sacrifices continued unabated. When she called to excitedly tell me she had met someone, my heart surged with cautious hope. His name was Nathaniel Pierce, from a family that sounded like they belonged to a different world entirely. Wealthy, influential, deeply rooted in New York's elite circles. Jasmine gushed about his kindness, his ambition, and the way he spoke about their future together. My joy was mixed with worry. Could Jasmine truly navigate these waters without losing sight of herself, without losing sight of us? But I swallowed those fears, burying them beneath continued labor and a quiet hope. When the invitation came to her graduation party, set in a glamorous Manhattan hotel ballroom, my heart soared. All my sacrifices, every raw ache in my bones, every penny pinched, they all pointed toward this one shining moment of celebration. I prepared my best outfit, a simple but elegant dress I bought secondhand from a thrift store, and carefully polished my mother's old silver necklace. Jasmine's dream had always been my mission. That day was supposed to be our shared victory, proof that even the humblest beginnings could lead to greatness. Little did I know that ballroom, so full of glamour and promise, would soon become the setting for the deepest humiliation of my life. When Jasmine walked across that stage at Columbia, her face radiant with pride, my heart nearly burst from joy. That diploma represented far more than academic success. It was evidence of every sacrifice I had made, each sleepless night, each dollar painfully saved, each moment of quiet desperation. But the true cost went far beyond mere money. My body bore silent testimony to Jasmine's journey. My hands, once gentle, were now permanently rough, knuckles swollen and stiff from years of scrubbing tiles and floors. My knees, often aching from hours spent cleaning, had begun to betray me with chronic pain. My back was a constant source of discomfort, each movement a reminder of endless shifts and grueling labor. Despite the toll on my body, my spirit had remained strong, buoyed by the promise of Jasmine's brighter future. Her success became my identity, her achievements, my pride. I wore my exhaustion like a badge of honor, never complaining, never faltering. But as the graduation day approached, I sensed the widening gulf between us. When Jasmine had announced her engagement to Nathaniel, the news was bittersweet. Nathaniel Pierce belonged to a New York family whose wealth seemed endless, their power woven deeply into the fabric of the city's upper society. My pride at Jasmine's achievement was shadowed by fear that our humble origins would become a blemish she'd tried desperately to hide. Still, I chose to believe love would bridge the gap between our worlds. In the months leading to graduation, Jasmine rarely called. When she did, the conversations felt hurried, almost transactional. Our bond, once unbreakable, was now strained. The voice on the other end of the line sounded increasingly foreign, distant and carefully guarded, her warmth replaced by a new cool politeness. Yet I ignored the signs, burying the hurt beneath layers of quiet optimism. Financially, the burden was immense. Scholarships had covered only a fraction of Columbia's towering costs. Loans piled up silently, each signed by my shaking hand, each a promise to pay back money I scarcely earned. At night, alone in my small apartment, I would sit by a flickering lamp and meticulously document every payment. Hidden inside the worn pages of my notebook was a single piece of paper, an informal promissory note Jasmine had signed when she started law school. I had insisted on it, less as a practical measure than a symbolic reminder. It's about accountability, baby. I had told her gently, a promise we share. She had laughed lightly then, signing quickly, dismissing it as just another one of her mother's quirks. She never truly understood what it represented, the depth of my sacrifice, the silent promise of our partnership. It wasn't about repayment. It was about respect, acknowledgement, gratitude, things I thought Jasmine inherently understood. As I prepared myself for Jasmine's graduation and the glamorous engagement celebration afterward, I tucked that little note carefully into my purse, a symbolic gesture intended as a reminder of our humble roots. I never dreamed I would need it for anything other than sentimentality. After all, this day was meant to unite us, mother and daughter, in shared pride and joy. But I was about to learn, painfully and publicly, that my sacrifices had a cost far deeper than I ever imagined, a price Jasmine herself would demand from me, shattering our bond forever. The celebration for Jasmine's graduation and her engagement to Nathaniel Pierce was held at one of Manhattan's glittering skyscraper hotels. As I stepped into the lavish ballroom, its ceilings sparkling with chandeliers and tables set with crystal, I felt utterly out of place despite my careful preparations. My thrift store dress suddenly felt worn and inadequate, my mother's silver necklace an unspoken apology for the elegance I lacked. Jasmine stood radiant, glowing beside Nathaniel, who exuded confidence and ease among a sea of elegant guests. Lawyers, businessmen, and socialites mingled effortlessly, each conversation a display of quiet privilege. I tried to ignore my discomfort, reminding myself this was Jasmine's world now, a world my sacrifices had helped create. When Jasmine spotted me, she approached quickly, greeting me with a practiced smile. "Mom, I'm glad you could make it," she said lightly, eyes briefly scanning my simple attire. Her voice held a polished, distant charm, the warmth we once shared reduced to mere politeness. Throughout the evening, Jasmine introduced me cautiously, almost reluctantly. "This is my mother, Gloria," she'd say. Her tone clipped. The guest smiled politely but moved swiftly on, leaving me standing alone, painfully aware of my insignificance in Jasmine's new world. Only Nathaniel, ever gracious, took time to greet me properly. "Mrs. Thompson," he said warmly, his eyes sincere, "Jasmine has told me so much about your hard work. You must be incredibly proud." "Yes," I replied softly, holding tightly to my dignity. "She's my pride and joy." But then came the moment that shattered my heart irrevocably. As the evening turned to toasts, Jasmine rose elegantly, glass lifted high. Her voice filled the room, confident, charming, polished. She thanked Nathaniel, his family, professors, and friends. Then she turned her eyes toward me. My heart quickened. This was it, the recognition I had quietly longed for. "And of course," Jasmine said, a brittle smile playing at her lips, "I have to thank my mother." She paused briefly, eyes flicking quickly toward Nathaniel's prestigious family. "Mom taught me about struggle, cleaning floors, working tirelessly. Her sacrifices showed me exactly the life I never wanted. She motivated me to reach higher, to leave behind that hardship." Polite laughter rippled across the room, masking the cruel sting of her words. Jasmine smiled brightly, unaware, or perhaps unconcerned, with how deeply she had wounded me. I sat frozen, humiliation burning my face. After the toast, Jasmine approached my table quietly, Nathaniel by her side. Her voice was soft but firm, leaving no doubt about her intentions. "Mom," she whispered sharply, leaning close, "we'll be joining Nathaniel's family table for the rest of the evening to discuss the wedding details. It's better that way, you'd feel uncomfortable among them." She hesitated briefly, then delivered the final blow. "Also, Nathaniel's parents suggested you not sit at the main table during the wedding. You know, appearances. I'm sure you'll understand." As she walked away, my world shattered around me. Jasmine, the daughter I'd sacrificed everything for, had publicly disowned me. I sat numbly in that glittering ballroom surrounded by strangers, my heart broken in silence, forced to face a harsh truth. My greatest sacrifice had become my deepest shame. The journey home from Jasmine's glamorous Manhattan party felt like a funeral procession. The lights of the city blurred through my tears, each neon glow a painful reminder of my daughter's new life, one from which I had just been cruelly erased. I rode silently in the back of the taxi, clutching my purse as though it were my last anchor to dignity. When I entered my modest Philadelphia apartment, the silence pressed down upon me like a physical weight. Every humble possession seemed to mock me, reminders of the sacrifice and struggle Jasmine had publicly scorned. The framed photographs on the mantel, her childhood smiles, her proud graduation portraits suddenly felt like bitter relics of a relationship that no longer existed. I collapsed onto my worn sofa, finally allowing myself the grief I'd kept bottled during the humiliating evening. Jasmine's words replayed mercilessly in my mind, each syllable slicing deeper. How could the daughter I raised, the girl whose dreams I had funded with years of quiet suffering, view my sacrifices as something shameful? When had the love between us twisted into embarrassment? Sleep refused to come. Instead, I sat awake through the long hours of darkness, my tears slowly giving way to something colder and harder. Beneath my heartbreak, a new emotion stirred, anger. It wasn't a burning rage, but something steady and unyielding. The humiliation Jasmine had served me in front of her wealthy fiancé and his prestigious family had ignited something dormant inside me. My dignity, long subdued by endless sacrifice, now demanded justice. In the small hours of dawn, clarity arrived. Jasmine's public betrayal had broken my heart, but it had also freed me from the chains of blind devotion. I began to think clearly, strategically, recalling the promissory note Jasmine had signed all those years ago. The informal agreement had been intended as a lesson in responsibility, but Jasmine's cruel rejection had transformed it into something else, a weapon of accountability. I moved to my bedroom, pulling open the drawer where I had kept the notebook with meticulous financial records. Inside was the faded promissory note, Jasmine's youthful signature clear and undeniable. The paper now represented more than a financial agreement. It symbolized respect, acknowledgement, the moral debt Jasmine had casually dismissed. As the sun crept through my curtains, illuminating my tired reflection, I knew exactly what I had to do. Jasmine had erased me publicly, stripping me of dignity in front of those whose acceptance she craved. She had traded our bond for approval from people who valued appearances above integrity, but I still held the truth, a truth she had conveniently hidden from her wealthy fiancé. It was time for Jasmine, who had disowned the woman who gave everything for her, to face the reality of her choices. My love had been limitless, but my tolerance for cruelty had finally run dry. Jasmine's luxurious new life was built on my years of hidden sacrifice. Now she would learn what happens when you erase the one person who knows exactly how fragile your foundation truly is. In the days following Jasmine's humiliating rejection, I found strength in silence. Though my heart still ached deeply, I moved deliberately, fueled by a quiet determination I'd forgotten I possessed. For years, my identity had been consumed by Jasmine's aspirations. Now, with her cruel dismissal, I rediscovered the woman I'd buried beneath sacrifice and toil. Each morning, I still rose before dawn to clean floors, but now I scrubbed with purpose, not out of desperation or necessity, but resolve. My aching knees and stiff fingers became badges of honor, marks of a woman who had persevered through storms others couldn't imagine. Every polished floor became a mirror reflecting my dignity. At work, colleagues noticed the change. Miss Clara, an elderly lady whose room I regularly cleaned at the nursing home, touched my arm gently one afternoon. "Gloria, you seem different, stronger. Has something happened?" I smiled faintly, feeling warmth in her sincere eyes. "I suppose you could say I've finally remembered who I am." In quiet moments at home, I prepared my next steps meticulously, knowing my dignity required clarity, not vengeance. The promissory note Jasmine signed years earlier now lay in front of me, its worn edges signifying the passage of time and my enduring patience. Jasmine had discarded our bond, dismissing it as disposable, but she could not erase the past. Determined to reclaim respect, I carefully gathered every receipt, every bank transfer, Every loan document, meticulous records of the enormous sacrifices made for Jasmine's prestigious education. Each piece of paper whispered truths that Jasmine had conveniently hidden from Nathaniel and his influential family. My aim was not to hurt, but to restore balance, to remind my daughter of the cost she'd casually ignored. One evening, I sat quietly by the window, writing a letter to Nathaniel Pierce, Jasmine's fiancé. I chose my words with careful precision, framing the issue not as emotional but as factual, clear evidence of Jasmine's hidden obligations and true character. It was my duty to ensure Nathaniel entered their marriage fully informed about the woman he believed he knew. I mailed the letter directly to Nathaniel's office in Manhattan, addressed confidentially to ensure it reached his hands. My heart beat steadily as I watched the postal workers stamp the envelope. There was no regret, no bitterness, only a quiet, powerful certainty. Jasmine had chosen deceit and appearances, I chose truth and integrity. Returning home that night, I felt lighter. For the first time in years, I felt the quiet strength within me begin to flourish again. The woman who'd endured endless struggles, who'd raised a brilliant daughter single-handedly, was finally stepping forward. My sacrifices had always been silent, but my voice would no longer remain unheard. Jasmine believed she had erased me from her glamorous new world, but I knew the truth would soon reclaim my rightful place. Not as a shameful past, but as the foundation upon which her entire future had been built. The wait after sending my letter to Nathaniel Pierce felt endless. Each moment was heavy with anticipation, yet I moved quietly through my routine, determined to hold my dignity intact. Jasmine had chosen to hide her truth. I chose only to reveal it. I wasn't driven by revenge, but rather by the need to restore balance and integrity to our lives. On a quiet Wednesday evening, just as I was finishing dinner, my phone rang. The Manhattan area code made my pulse quicken. Gloria Thompson, came a professional, slightly tense voice. "This is Nathaniel Pierce. Do you have a moment to speak?" "Yes," I replied calmly, steadying myself. "I've been expecting your call." "I received your letter," Nathaniel said carefully, "and I admit it's raised serious concerns. Jasmine never mentioned any of this to me." "I suspected as much," I answered softly. "That's precisely why I reached out. You deserve to know the full story before marrying my daughter." Nathaniel paused, absorbing the weight of my words. "I'd like to meet in person, Mrs. Thompson. Would you be willing to come to my office tomorrow afternoon? Bring whatever documents you have." The next day, I took the early bus to New York City, holding the folder containing Jasmine's financial history and the signed promissory note tightly in my lap. My heart was calm, though heavy. This meeting would define Jasmine's future but also affirm my right to respect. Nathaniel's office overlooked the city skyline, a symbol of wealth and privilege. As he invited me inside, I saw uncertainty shadowing his typically confident demeanor. He gestured toward a polished conference table, and we sat opposite each other. Without hesitation, I placed the folder between us. Nathaniel opened it cautiously, his eyes widening as he studied the meticulous records of Jasmine's tuition payments, living expenses, and the loans I had quietly shouldered. Finally, he lifted the promissory note, Jasmine's signature bold and undeniable. "She told me everything was covered by scholarships," he murmured, disbelief coloring his voice. "Scholarships helped," I responded gently, "but they barely scratched the surface. I paid the rest by working 3 cleaning jobs." Jasmine knew exactly where the money came from, yet she chose to conceal that from you. Nathaniel's expression hardened. "She publicly humiliated you, Mrs. Thompson." "I'm deeply sorry for that." "It was more than humiliation," I said softly. "It was a rejection of everything I had sacrificed." Jasmine was ashamed of the very foundation that gave her success. Nathaniel closed the folder, looking directly into my eyes. "I pride myself on integrity. I can't enter a marriage based on lies. Jasmine will have to answer for this." My heart tightened briefly. The consequences of Jasmine's choices were finally unfolding. "I never wanted this to happen," I said, sincere but firm, but Jasmine left me no choice. Truth always finds its way out. Nathaniel nodded solemnly. Thank you for your honesty, Mrs. Thompson. You've given me much to consider. As I walked from his office, a wave of quiet relief filled me. Jasmine had hidden her truth, believing wealth and prestige could bury the sacrifices of the past. Now she would have to face her choices openly. Justice had begun, quietly but undeniably, restoring the dignity that Jasmine had once carelessly tried to erase. The fallout arrived swiftly. One evening, barely a week after my meeting with Nathaniel, a knock rattled urgently against my apartment door. Opening it revealed Jasmine standing in the hallway, her usual polished composure replaced by a frantic desperation I'd never seen before. "How could you?" she demanded, her voice cracking with anger and disbelief. "You ruined everything." I regarded her steadily, my heart heavy but resolved. "Jasmine, I only shared the truth you tried so hard to hide. You betrayed me to Nathaniel," she cried, stepping inside and closing the door harshly. Her eyes, once confident, now pleaded for sympathy. "He confronted me, questioned everything. He said our marriage would be based on lies." I shook my head gently. "You chose to build your future on secrets, Jasmine. All I did was show Nathaniel the foundation." Her face twisted bitterly. "Foundation? You humiliated me. Nathaniel's family, they won't even speak to me now. Everything I worked for is falling apart." "What you worked for?" I asked calmly, meeting her gaze without flinching. "Everything you had was built on my sacrifices. Years of cleaning floors, breaking my back. You erased me from your life as if I were a stain you could scrub away. But you can't erase the truth." She slumped onto the sofa, tears streaming down her face. "I thought you loved me. Mothers protect their children. I do love you, Jasmine, more than you'll ever fully know." I responded softly, feeling a sharp pang deep in my chest. "But love doesn't mean allowing cruelty. You had no right to shame me, to erase me publicly. You chose prestige over your own mother." Her voice weakened into a whisper. "What happens now?" Nathaniel called off our engagement. I lost everything. I knelt slowly in front of her, forcing her eyes to meet mine. "You didn't lose everything. You lost the illusion. You forgot where you came from. You traded authenticity for status and approval. And now you must confront what remains." I reached over, gently touching her trembling hands. "Jasmine, I didn't expose you to punish you. I exposed the truth so you would remember the person you used to be, the daughter I raised, who understood gratitude and integrity." She was silent, tears still falling, understanding finally dawning on her face. The lesson was harsh, but necessary. Jasmine had spent years trying to erase her roots, but now those roots were undeniable, forcing her back to reality. Weeks later, I learned Jasmine had moved into a modest Brooklyn apartment, working at a smaller, less glamorous law firm. Each month, as we had agreed, a portion of her salary arrived in my account, symbolic repayment of the sacrifices I'd made. It wasn't the money that mattered. It was acknowledgement, accountability, and respect. One evening, sitting quietly by the window, I retrieved the original promissory note, holding it carefully. Its purpose had been served. Jasmine had learned her lesson, a lesson she would carry forever.